Welcome to Doorway to Design. I'm Cindy Joshi, your host, where we help you explore possibilities for your special day. So are you wondering what to do with your ceremony? Well, that's not only you. A lot of brides are wondering what to do for their ceremony. There's so many possibilities when you go to Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, oozing gorgeous pictures, right? You're like, oh, I want the purple theme. I want the blush theme. The white looks classic too, right? You can't go wrong with that. So a lot of options out there, obviously. But this particular bride, she picked blushes and ivories and champagnes. Who doesn't love that? That's an amazing color palette. Your ivory dress would stand out. And if it's an Indian Asian wedding, you know, any color would really go with it. It's a timeless color. So I'm looking forward to explaining this bride's inspiration to you and then going into the details of how we achieved what we did. And again, it's a blush wedding, ivories and champagne. So one of the things we're going to talk about, this bride in October, yes, she wanted beautiful blush wedding in ivory and champagne, but some things that came up into play was, is this going to be a floor walkway to the altar, or is she wanting an elevated catwalk? That was one big hot topic throughout the whole planning time, because, you know, parents wanted something on the floor low key where all their guests could see what's happening. They didn't want big centerpieces, the big floral pieces to kind of really hinder their guest view, especially the ones that are closest to the aisle. So that was one big hot topic. But the bride wanted obviously to be elevated because she's worked really hard and she's envisions the special day. Every girl does, right? And so she wanted to walk down this aisle and all focus be on her. Yes, elevation does help, because then you're doing 2 steps up and you're actually walking this catwalk down, whether it's 20 feet, 30 feet, 40 feet, you're walking to your altar, and that long walk with lots of florals on the left and right side do make a difference. It is a dream come true for every bride. Some brides it might not be their cup of tea because they might be shy or not so, bold, but that's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely gorgeous. So that's a big topic for us. Using of colors, you know, this was an Indian wedding. Both parties were Indian, but then we also talked about quite a bit. We'll talk about, you know, what kind of colors we need to use and keeping all cultural backgrounds in mind. This is a Christian Malay wedding, so we'll talk more about that. We're also going to talk about how to increase the guest count, where it increases your guest count goes from 200 to 240. It might seem like a low number, but it is. You know, how do you handle that last minute? Her wish list, she had a pretty good, decent wish list. So we talked about that. Did we accommodate that? Were we able to do that? You're going to learn that today. Requirement from the client. The venues sometimes have their requirements as well. So we'll talk about that. And also lastly, the elevated catwalk leading up to the altar. Whether we want an elevated altar or do we want it on the floor. So that was one of the things we're going to talk about as well in this video. You're going to learn all these things. So I can't wait. I'm excited to share this information with you. We'll go through the journey and we'll answer your questions. Hopefully anything you're wondering, if not, looking at their must-haves. Must-haves, their number one was a stage. Stages for most Indian weddings is stage is the biggest requirement, because that's where all the pictures get taken. That's the biggest backdrop. That's the anchor in the room. Walkway was very important for them. We'll talk about walkway. If you see down, we also put walkway as a good to have versus a must have, because the bride wanted an elevated catwalk and the parents wanted it on the floor, so that doesn't hinder anybody's view. Gold chivari chairs are always pleasant to look at, rather than those banquet chairs that hotels give you. They're cushy and comfortable, but they're not exactly the bride's dream to have these ugly banquet chairs. So we went with the gold chivari chairs. Aisle markers. Aisle markers are the florals that lead you up to the path all the way to your altar. And that's what we're going to talk about. That was also a must-have from their list. And as far as good to have was an elevated catwalk. That is what the bride wanted. We've already talked about that. We're going to try to make her happy as well as the parents. So let's see what we did, and hopefully you like it. Okay, so inspiration pictures, I usually get bombarded with them, but this bride was a little lost with inspiration. But then when she saw this one picture, she fell in love with it. And I asked her quite a few questions because I was nervous about making sure she understands and I understand her requirements. So one of the first things you see here is you see lots of flowers. Everywhere there's flowers. Flowers on the draping itself, flowers on the floor, flowers on the aisleway, and not just any kind of flowers. They're gorgeous peonies, roses, hydrangeas, and orchids, and they look like fresh, and they've got cherry blossoms coming out this way. And there's large arrangements. These large arrangements could cost you anywhere from $800 to $1,000 and fresh. And so that's why my biggest question to her was, does she want that many flowers? And her answer simply was yes. God bless her heart, no problem. We can consider that. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to budget, right? So keeping in mind she wanted a lot of flowers, the other question I had for her is the color, right? Does she want the white color? And she simply said to me that was just because she loved the florals in there and the amount of them, and also how much draping there was, just the balance between the draping and the flowers and the candles. And because she mentioned those three things, I was super happy. I got my answer. I did not want to spend too much more time on it because I understood what she took away from this picture, but she wanted it in her color theme, which is blushes and ivories. And she didn't have to have stark white. See how those pedestals are white right here? She didn't need to have that exact color. She was just more in love with how the setup was. Lots of flowers on the left and right. Middle part, she was okay with. I was asking her if we can laminate this middle part to a white walkway, would that be okay? So that way we're saving so much money here in terms of dollars of not putting too many fresh flowers or even silk flowers there. She was totally flexible there. So draping, she liked the fact that there was draping. So somehow we have to, transport that into what products we would like to suggest to her with draping and not too much draping and flowers everywhere with candles. The best part about designing a wedding is the sketching part, for me at least, and for the bride. And that's where you start to kind of see how the inspiration's coming together. So we took this gold metal arch the bride selected, and we're going to put some flowers on top of it. So it has a crowning is what we call this, floral crowning, with orchids dripping down. Those little squigglies are orchids. Then we're going to draw 2 floral walls on the either side of it in ivory. I'm doing black because you guys could see. White on one won't be able to, it's not something you'll be able to see. So that makes sense. 2 floral walls. In between, we actually ended up thinking of hanging these glass balls, orbs I would call it, with succulents inside. So it looks a little bit of greenery, just a hint of greenery. We did 2 floral arrangements. Let me bring my blush out at the bottom and on the top. And then we added some florals on top of the ivory floral wall, about an inch, or I'm sorry, a foot. And then we did this beautiful, gorgeous chiffon-like drapery in the back. We proposed that we do that because, remember, the bride liked draping at some point. And if we'd liked this geometric shape, which she fell in love with immediately, there was going to be no scope of using draping anywhere else. Besides, this hides the hotel wall behind, the hideous wall. And this is how I created the stage, 12 feet by 24 wide. And this is where the priest would stand, the bride and groom, and then your bridal party on the left and right side. And if it needs to switch to an Indian ceremony, that's when you would do mandap chairs. And you would switch it. We would have those placed nearby the stage. And then we can go ahead and switch it over to an Indian ceremony. This is the catwalk. And 24 feet long. If it's elevated, we also need steps for the bride to walk up. And then we'll go ahead put some gold metal urns and floral vases in gold on the stage riser. Something like that. And then we're going to go ahead and top them off with floral toppers. And blushes mostly, blushes and ivories. Oozing with some ivory orchids coming down. And of course, can't forget our gold chivari chairs. We're going to set them up classroom style on either side. This is just a quick way of showing you what the day would look like. Okay, now that we've talked about the inspiration, the requirements, and the sketches, let's talk about functionality. Functionality is equally as important, if not anything more, because without functionality, nothing will happen. Hotel risers, for example, let's talk about that. We can design all we want. As designers, we could talk about this beautiful vision and give that vision to our brides, but then does a hotel not have that equipment? So hotel risers are usually these ugly platforms that are risen off the ground. That's how you create the stages. Most hotels don't have enough to create a huge walkway. They just have enough to make a stage or two where they use it for corporate events. So in this case, the venue didn't have enough, and the client had to go out and rent it, which is fine. And so that is functionality for parents and brides and grooms. You kind of plan that around the budget so that you will, these are the last minute hidden surprises that come in terms of items to load in the hotel. You want to do board lamination boards, because we had to export a lot of those so that we could do a white flooring on not only the stage but the catwalk as well. Pipe and pulling system. We did huge amounts of pipe and pulling systems, so we were hiding the back wall where you see a lot of the blush chiffon like draping. Yes, it sounds like it's light and airy, but it's a lot of hard, heavy equipment. A lot of guys have to pick up to get there to make this happen. Florals might sound easy, especially in silk, but we have a lot of hours of putting them together. But then florals also have a hardware side to it, where we have these big metal urns that need to be transported in one piece without scratches on them, so the gold stays intact, and then we put flowers on it, and then we tweak it on the day of the installation. Chivari chairs, who could have forgotten, right? So those gold chivari chairs just add enough amount of gold, and that's what we had to do. Steps, white steps have to match the white walkway, and that's where we had to have that. That's a big logistic part where she needs to step up so she can go up the catwalk to her altar. And lastly, let's not forget layout. The hotel provides us a layout. Sometimes us as designers, we also do layouts. So it really depends on what your service is. And sometimes planners make the layout. So let's look at the layout soon, and let's talk about how the scale to size and room ratio looks like after we put in those 240 chairs. Functionality. Why is the layout so important? Well, let's talk about that. See this right here, this is the hotel riser. So if these aren't here, Decor can't even possibly start doing the lamination and other items like draping and things like that, or products on top of it. This right here is just two screens so that all the guests could see what's happening on the stage here. That's provided with the audiovisual department of the hotel. And until, quite honestly, these two pieces aren't put in, you can't really work on the chairs, because you gotta see if there's enough space around it for people to walk through and any hazards might not happen. And so that you can also see how long you want your catwalk to be, or a walkway on the floor. This is gonna help us decide how many chairs do we put on each side. So in this case, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 chairs. And then we're going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 rows. So that's how we decide the obstruction of view and how wide the stage is and how far out to go in terms of the chair layouts on either direction. Technically, we could have added more chairs here if the guest count grew, but if the guest count grows, if you don't want to spend more money, then obviously it's wiser to go this direction. And functionality wise, if your guest count, let's say for some reason went to 300, then you would increase the catwalk, which means then at that point you would add more product, and that would cost you more money to be able to do that. So that is why layouts are very important functionality wise. Oh my God, that was a lot to deal with, right? We went through a plethora of information. And so we talked about this October bride. She was in love with blushes, ivories, and champagnes. Her guest count started at 200, grew to 240. Indian weddings, the number never goes down. It only goes up, hun. So if your parents and you guys are fighting over numbers, just give in. It's not a battle worth fighting, because you're going to do decor on the stage. You might as well just get more people to come in. Budget does have to match your wish list, and if it doesn't, we let you know this is not something we can do, or maybe you tone down your expectations, or we increase the budget and we tweak it a little. But nevertheless, we work with you. The stage was very important. It was important to have lots of flowers. Remember her inspiration picture? She had this gorgeous white wedding, but that was just for inspiration to show us how many flowers she wants, and she wanted a lot of flowers, so that's where a lot of money got spent. And so we did spend a lot of time on that. The blushes and ivory flowers, the walkway. She wanted a walkway. It's okay to have it on the floor, but her heart really was set on an elevated one. Who doesn't want one? It's your special day. It's like a catwalk. So you're the bride, being the model, walking down the aisle, and that's where the pictures come out so gorgeous. her walkway was wider, and so we talked about that. We talked about chivari chairs, the importance of gold chivari chairs, how important they are, because they make or break the wedding. If you had imagined those hotel ugly chairs, if they were 240 of them in that ballroom, that would look hideous. So I'm so glad she picked on the chivari chairs as a must-have on her list. A lot that we talked about, a lot we accomplished. We gave her all the things on her wish list, which is great. That makes me happy, the bride's happy, and the parents happy. So it was just overall a beautiful wedding. Hope you enjoyed it. And we're looking forward to sharing our next video about her reception, hoping that you would like that as well. And if you haven't done so already, please like the channel and subscribe to us. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you for watching us.